maganda pong pag-usapan kung ano ba ang karapatang pangtao. Noong pong nakalipas, actually kahapon, nakausap ko rin si Professor Aaron Jed Rabena at nabanggit niya na yung human rights is not just civil and political rights. Mahalaga rin yung economic rights sapagkat kung ang isang tao ay hirap, sadlak sa kahirapan, ay hindi magkakaroon ng maayos na kabuhayan at hindi makakamtan kung anuman itong sinasabing human rights. So ito po ang ating focus ngayong araw na ito. And of course, meron tayong mga resource persons na inanyayahan upang magbahagi ng kanilang mga pananaw. Inaasahan ko rin po na yung iba pang inanyayahan natin will find time to share with us their views and opinions about human rights. Ito po ang ika-72 taon ng pagdiriwang ng Human Rights Day sapagkat ito po ay sinimula noong 1948 ng ilatag ang International Human Rights Law. So we'd like to introduce our guests today. Kasama po natin si Lieutenant Colonel and soon-to-be Colonel Eduardo Esquivias mula sa Armed Forces of the Philippines. At kasama rin po natin si Relisa Isay Lucena. We're expecting former CHR Chair Loretta Ann Paragas Rosales to sit with us. Pero siguro, mahalagang bigyan ng pansin kung ano ba ang paninindigan ng Armed Forces of the Philippines tungkol sa human rights in as much as the 1986 Constitution recognized the value of human rights, that it started its Commission on Human Rights, and then the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the Philippine National Police also had their own Human Rights Affairs Office. Probably the good Lieutenant Colonel Ed Esquivias could tell us about their role sa Armed Forces of the Philippines. Good morning and welcome to the discussions, Colonel.
Good morning, Sir Melo, at maraming pong salamat at naanyahan niyo po ang AFP sa aming pong opisina sa inyong programa. Alam niyo po, ang aming pong opisina ng AFP Human Rights Office, ito po ay create noong year 2007. Tapos noong 2010 po, pinalawak po o in-strengthen mga functions ng opisina. Kaya po sa field units po ng AFP, from the Unified Command, Major Services, yung Army, Navy, Air Force, yung mga Unified Commands, yung mga Northern Luzon Commands, Southern Luzon Command, and the other commands po, pati yung mga Army Divisions and its equivalent sa Navy and Air Force down to battalion level, meron pong designated na human rights officer para po magampanan po ang aming pong tungkulin sa pagrespeto po ng karapatang pantao.
Siguro po, in brief, you could tell us over the years, po yung mga hiniing sa inyo ng ating mga kababayan.
Bali, yung pong ayon pong ang importante pong mandate ng aming opisina o yung AFP noon ay yung aming pong engagement with stakeholders. Alam namin na the AFP alone cannot po fully address yung mga human rights issues and mga alleged violations, and we need civil society, in fact, and even the CHR na pagka matulungan po kami na para po kung may mga reklamo man or mga issue na involve ang AFP, matulungan po kayo malaman yung katotohanan sa lahat ito, at kung meron pong may kasalanan, yun po ay dadaan sa aming military justice system. Kaya po ang CHR po ay matagal na po namin ka-partner with respect to education and training on monitoring of cases, including po mga data sharing and yung pag-file po ng mga kaso against perpetrators, whether in government, whether in the AFP or from the non-state actors or non-state armed groups like the NPA po.
Yeah, mahalaga kasi ito sapagkat unang-una, yung experience ng martial law, kinatakutan ng militar. Nabago ba yung mindset? Nawala ba yung pangamba ng mga kababayan natin sa sandatahang lakas at maging sa pambansang pulisya?
Opo, sa tingin ko po totoo kasi kung titignan po natin yung performance rating o trust rating sa AFP ngayon, mataas po, no? Ang aming pong trust rating. That only goes to show po na yung ang attitude po towards the AFP, unlike nung panahon po nung panahon nung rehimeng Marcos, nagbago na po, no? This is more so on the fact na yung aming pong pagiging transparent po and our kung meron pa mga reklamo against our personnel, we submit to the jurisdiction po of the DOJ, the PNP, and even the CHR po. So that that is the positive proof po na kami po ay nagbago na, lalong-lalo na ngayon na yung aming pong education and training, mga curriculum, no? So, yung pre-entry, pag-apply sa AFP, hanggang mag-basic course siya, mag-advanced course, specialization, all the way up po, yung general staff course, meron pa mga human rights training. Kaya yun po ay nai-instill maging kultura na po ng human rights sa loob po, sa hanay po ng Armed Forces of the Philippines.
Okay. All right. So, at least merong assurance, no, na nababago yung paradigm. We're also joined by former CHR chair, a good friend, at madalas kong naanyayahan, si Professor Eta Rosales. Magandang umaga po. Magandang umaga, madam. And welcome to the discussions today. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's International Human Rights Day.
Human Rights Day. Yeah. Happy Human Rights Day.
Yeah, how do you feel about it? Ano po ang inyong nararamdaman? Sa ngayon, no?
Sa ngayon, ano nararamdaman ko? Well, it caught me by surprise that there was a summit for Human Rights Consciousness Week held by no less than the DOJ. Yes. Human Rights Summit from the 7th to the 10th. So it's ending right now. And this is the first time that this has happened in the political history of the Philippines, that the DOJ should hold a summit on human rights. Did you know that?
I never heard of it. I never heard of it until you told me. So, do you consider it a miracle, Professor? Is it a miracle?
I do not consider. No, I don't consider it a miracle. I am surprised. I'm not even pleasantly surprised, but I'm curiously surprised. I am suspiciously surprised by the summit meeting. And no less than President Duterte spoke. And he said that, he delivered a speech. And he said that, I am so glad that the Philippines is a country that singles itself out from other countries with respect to having signed and become a state party to so many international human rights treaties. Did you not know that? Yeah. Have you not heard him talk that way?
I have, during my high school days in Bicol, I was told of the conversion of Saul to St. Paul. Yeah, he fell from a horse to sunlight, and that changed him.
Well, that was St. Paul. That was Saul. We're talking about Duterte.
So you are really curiously surprised what made him, talk that way.
Yeah, well, the surprise only lasted just a few minutes. I started trying to figure out why all of a sudden the DOJ will hold a summit meeting which is supposed to be ending today. But look at you, you're a media person, you haven't even heard about it.
Paano kasi, hinihintay ko yung advisory kung meron. hindi ako nagko-cover sa Justice Beat. You know, I used to cover the Justice Beat during the time of Secretary Gingona, and that was a long, long time ago. Well,
Oh,
of course, I covered it during the preliminary investigation of several controversial cases and the like. Pero I haven't heard of it so far.
well,
Thank
no
you.
less than the United Nations Resident Coordinator coordinated with the DOJ. And of course, the CHR was also was invited to be, of course, a part of this whole thing. But to have the DOJ lead a human rights summit conference in the Philippines is a bit curious,
Mhm.
suspiciously curious, but no longer very curious. I kind of understand that. And you know what? One of the things in their agenda is to study and perhaps propagate the human rights dimension of the anti-terror law. What do you think of that? That's in the agenda.
Really?
Yes.
Ah,
So so there. At least I gave you news that you haven't heard of, and you can probably find out. This is their last day, supposedly. But
okay.
of
Thank you for the information. Thank you. What about the armed forces? Were you invited to be part of this Human Rights Summit, Colonel Esquivias? Yes, please.
Yes, sir. We were invited. As far as I know, when this was being conceptualized, it was based on the joint technical cooperation between the UN and the Philippine government. So one of the agenda items was to hold a human rights summit, and the AFP is part of the AU-35 mechanism. It's the interagency committee on extralegal killings, enforced appearances, torture, and other grave violations to the right to life, liberty, and security of persons. So with the joint technical cooperation between the Philippine government and the UN, it was through the DOJ that the Human Rights Summit was conceptualized, and we are part of the of the sessions. Especially today, this morning po, the session is on international humanitarian law. So the chief of the AAP Human Rights Office, Colonel Joel Alejandro S. Naknak, is one of the panelists together with Judge Soliman Santos and Attorney Jim Arroyo of CHR, and other speakers for this morning are Georgia Hines of ICRC and retired Justice Adolf Ascuna. So we are part po of this Human Rights Summit po.
Yeah. Uh, Mahalaga yung nabanggit ninyo, Attorney. Yes, Professor, got anything to say?
yes, you see, I'm glad Colonel Esquivias
Hi,
is here.
ma'am.
Hello, long time no see.
Yes, ma'am.
Quite long time, talaga matagal na. So there he is, no? Validating what I had to say. And you know, it's maganda naman yan. So that to me is surprising, no? Pero actually, as far as the AFP is concerned, hindi naman kagulat-gulat yan because during my time, we were always having our, you know, our conferences together, our meetings together. Actually, the other day, the retired Human Rights Affairs Officer, so H. Rao, PNP General Chuck Ginto called me up.
Ah,
December 8 yata yon. And he wished me happy Human Rights Day because it was at that time that he was going to talk before the LTO na siya eh. I think
Okay.
he's vice chair of the LTO, second in command. And he was going to talk to the people in a flag ceremony. And sabi niya sa akin, I think what I'm going to do is that I'm going to tell them the narrative of the good days we had together during the time that you were CHR chair, and the very, active relations between the CHR and the PNP and the
Mhm.
AFP. So I'm going to tell him, or I'm going to tell them that these were all positive activities that had taken place. Thank you, I said. Thank you. I'm glad you're going to talk that way.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, yun. Because we did have very good relations during that time. And ang sabi lang ni Presidente Ninoy, ay Noy nun sa akin, bago mo naman ikalat sa media kung ano yung kung meron violations, ipaalam mo muna sa akin. That's what I did. I made sure that they would know about it. And then I said, and then of course I would call the chief, the HR chief. And that time it was Chuck Ginto. First it was Lina Sarmiento, then it was
Yeah.
Chuck Ginto. Oo. So,
Yeah.
pag-uusapan namin yan. Tapos, dalawa kami, the PNP and then the CHR, pupuntahan namin yung area kung saan naganap yung violations mismo.
Mhm.
Yun. And then we would have dialogues with us head in command. Katulad nung pinadidila sa lahat ng mga kadete yung flagpole.
Aha.
Oh, nagpunta kami nun sa kampo nun eh. Grabe ang kwan. Pero those were the days when dynamic ang relations ng CHR at saka ng security sector.
Mhm. Okay. Maganda yung recollection ninyo, no? Kaya lang, mukhang nabago nung nagkaroon ng anti-terrorism law. Right?
Oh. Oh, and well, hindi lang yung anti-terrorism law yun, kundi na bago yung buong administrasyon. At pumasok na nga si Duterte. And, si President Duterte can talk that way about, well, we're proud of the human rights. Kasi naman meron naman siyang kailangan sa United Nations. Sa mga ibang bansa.
Yeah. Okay, we will talk about that in detail in a short while. Kasama rin natin si Isay Lucena. Isay, good morning. Magandang umaga and welcome to our discussions today. Can you tell us about your experience? Ano ba yung iyong karanasan?
Good morning, Sir Melo. Good morning po sa inyong lahat. Grabe po, yung karanasan ko na kinuhanan ako ng anak, ginamit sa politika ng walang pasabi, ginamit ng minor ang aking anak, dala-dala ang politika na hindi man lang ako hiningan ng consent ng mga eskwelahan, gamit-gamit ang human rights o ang CHR. Napakasakit sa isang ina. Wala ba kaming karapatan bilang mga magulang? At karapatan ng anak ko na mag-aral, makatapos ng pag-aaral, magkaroon ng maayos na kinabukasan, at karapatan ng anak ko na magkaroon ng safe na lugar. Asan yung karapatan na yun sa human rights? Napakasakit po na yung anak ko nasa bingit ng kamatayan ngayon. Napakasakit po na yung anak ko hawak-hawak ng anak bayan na hindi ko mawari. Bakit wala kaming karapatan? Bakit hindi ko makausap yung anak ko? Kung problemang pampamilya, dapat nasa akin yung anak ko, inaayos namin ng pamilya. Pero nakialam ang Makabayan Black, nakialam ang Kabataan Party List, nakialam ang anak bayan. Asan ang human rights doon?
Isay, bigyan mo ako ng background for our listeners or viewers. Saan nag-aaral yung anak mo? Ilang taon siya? Give us the details kung hindi naman tayo lalabag sa Privacy Act.
16 years old po, in-enroll ko yung anak ko bilang senior high school sa FEU Moraita. First time niyang pumasok sa isang malaking universities. Although senior high school lang siya. Kasi gusto niya magkaroon ng gusto niyang sumali sa varsity doon para maging makatapos siya ng pag-aaral at the same time maging scholar siya. Si AJ, bilang nanay, wala akong trabaho. Nakafocus lang yung sarili ko sa anak ko. Kilala ko yung anak ko eh. The moment na alam mo na na may naiibang pattern eh. May nangyayaring psychological manipulation na ginagawa sa mga kabataan. Si AJ po ay isang babae, 16 years old na recruit ng anak bayan sa loob ng FEU Moraita. And then nag full-time siya nung siya ay 17 years old. Umalis sa pag-aaral dahil sabi niya kailangan na siya ng samahan niya. I don't know what kind of ideology, kung ano yung pinasok nila sa utak ng anak ko. Pero walang dapat makialam sa kaisipan ng bata eh, lalo na yung ganung edad. Asa na yung human rights ko bilang ina, human rights ng anak ko, ng buong kabataan na inaalis sa eskwelahan, bundukan, asa na yun? Masakit, sir, masakit na pinag-uusapan natin itong mga human rights na to. Pero at the back, may mga batang nasisira. Asa ng human rights nun? May pamilyang nasisira. Asa ng human rights namin? Sino lang ba ang may karapatang humingi ng human rights?
Okay. Isay, bigyan mo ako ng background, no? So, nag-aaral siya sa Far Eastern University as senior high school. Pagkatapos, regular pa ba siyang umuwi sa inyo noon? O ano ba? Nag-dorm ba siya sa Maynila? Ano ba?
No, sir. Kahit gusto niyang mag-dorm, hindi po ako nag-ano sa kanya na mag-dorm kasi hindi ako sanay na wala ang anak ko. Si AJ po Pasay ako eh. Siya ay Manila. So everyday yun nagbabiyahe siya. Madali naman kasi may MRT. Ngayon nung bago siya pumasok, sir, napakalinaw sa isip niya kung ano yung gusto niyang mangyari sa buhay niya. Yung pangarap niya, kasama kami. Ngayon, nung na-recruit na siya ng anak bayan, umiba na po yung kanyang pag-uugali. Sa personality niya, may kakaiba. Sa pananaw niya, mas lalong malaki ang kakaiba, ang nag-iba. Until yung uwi po kasi niya, meron akong tinatawag, sir, na rule sa loob ng bahay. Sakop yun dapat ang anak ko kasi minor pa yung anak ko. At higit sa lahat, kilala ko yung anak ko eh. Alam ko kung saan siya, ano yung kalakasan niya at ano yung kahinaan niya. At alam ko kung masisira ang anak ko sa isang organisasyon. Ngayon, yung anak ko po na-recruit siya ng 16, hindi ko alam na sinasama-sama na pala siya sa rally at punong-puno na siya ng galit sa gobyerno. For a 16 years old at saka 17 years old na hindi nakaranas ng kalupitan ng army o ng pulis. Bakit sasabihin ng anak ko yung galit na yon sa ating gobyerno o sa ating kapulisan na hindi niya naranasan? Pinasok lang sa utak niya. Pinasok sa utak niya yung mga iba't ibang uri ng pananamantala ng human rights nung panahon ni Marcos. Ang tanong ko, nakita ba ng anak ko yon? Hindi natin alam kung ano yung manipulated at hindi natin alam kung ano doon yung orchestrated o hindi natin alam kung alin doon yung totoo. Pero ang sabihin mo yon, sinabi mo sa anak ko at pinuno mo ng galit yung anak ko. Ako nga, sir, never akong kahit anong paghihirap o ano yung nararanasan namin mag-asawa, never kong sinabi sa anak ko. Bakit? Kasi ayaw kong masira yung niya, kaisipan niya, yung pananaw niya. Kasi bata pa siya. Nasa tamang edad yun eh. Pero yung ginawa kasi ng organisasyon, psychological yung ginawa nila. Kaya nasa sitwasyon kami ngayon na yung anak ko nanganganib ang buhay. Yun po, si AJ, ni-recruit siya ng anak bayan, pinagrarally. Hindi ko alam na nagrarally-rally na pala siya. Nung first sem, sir, maayos pa yung grades niya, nasa top siya. Nung second sem, umiiba na siya. To the point na ayaw niya na kaming bumili ng mga Nutri-Asia product. Ayaw niya na rin kumain sa mga fast food chain dahil daw mapanamantala, dahil daw may end of contract. Pinaliwanag ko sa kanya, nagtrabaho ako dun eh. Iba yung panahon noon, iba yung panahon ngayon. Inaayos ng gobyerno lahat. Kumbaga nagre-reach out yung government eh. Iba kasi yung ipupunuin mo yung bata na ito dapat, ito ganito, ganun eh.
Mhm.
Dapat yung realidad.
Okay.
Iba yung ideolohiya sa realidad, sir eh.
So, Isay, ano nangyari mula nung napuna mo, na iba na yung takbo ng anak mo, nawala ba siya? Nag-underground ba siya? Ano ba?
Ano po, nung una, akala ko normal lang yun kasi nga nasa adolescent stage.
Nawala yung signal. Is the internet signal all over
Ayun.
again?
Apo,
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah.
Ayun po, akala ko nasa adolescent stage lang siya. So, kailangan kong mag-adjust kasi ako yung nanay. Kumbaga, kailangan ko siyang intindihin. Pero habang tumatagal, sir, lalo siyang lumalala. To the point nung February, na nawala po siya ng 3 days. February 2, nagsabi siya sa akin na aktivista na ako, wala na akong magagawa. Yung pagiging aktivista niya, under ng anak bayan. So, nung sinabi niya sa akin na anak bayan na siya, before that, sir, gabi na siya lagi nauwi. Dati po, 6 p.m., nasa bahay na siya. Pero nung lumalala na siya, hanggang 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, hindi po maano yun eh, hindi po normal sa amin yun. At natatakot ako sa kaligtasan niya dahil nga po, maraming addict, yung mga addict nang-hold up, pumapatay. So, yun po yung kinakatakot ko. Kaya po meron akong curfew. Plus, babae yung anak ko. And then, noong February 2, sir, yung nagsabi siya sa akin, aktivista na ako, wala na akong magagawa. Para akong binuhusan ng tubig na malamig. So, parang inalisan niya ako ng karapatan bilang ina for a 17 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And then, nung sumunod na araw, nawala siya ng 3 days. Akala ko, normal nag-text kasi siya eh. Sabi niya, Mami, may ginagawa lang ako. So, 3 days na yun, sir. After nun, nung pagka second day, nag-report ako sa school. Sabi ko, Ma'am, may sinalihang organisasyon yung anak ko na anak bayan. Sabi ko po, nawawala, hindi pa umuuwi yung anak ko. Natatakot ako para sa kaligtasan niya. Ngayon, sinabi ko rin na baka po kasi kung saan-saan napunta yung anak ko, tulungan niyo ako. Ngayon, doon ko nalaman na marami na palang na-recruit yung anak ko sa loob ng eskwelahan mismo. So natakot ako na kung ano yung mangyari sa kanila. Yung anak ko minor eh. Ang nire-recruit niya, kapwa niya rin minor. And then after that, sir, umuwi siya ng parang February 6 ng gabi. And then, hindi ko siya muna pinausap nung pagka February 7. Isipin mo, sir, for a 17 years old, sabihan ka na, kalabang ka na. Kasi pinamissing ko siya. Nag-report ako sa police dahil sabi ko, Sir, missing po yung anak ko. Baka po kasi kung saan yung anak ko, kami yung ikukulong. Ganun po yun eh, di ba? Pagka pabaya kang ina, pabaya kang magulang.
May responsibilidad ng magulang doon. Tama. Okay.
Yes. So, nag-report ako.
Nung malaman ninyo nawawala, nag-report kayo, nag-away na kayo, nagreklamo ka, nagkaso ka na?
Hindi pa po. Hindi ko inaway yung anak ko kasi iniisip ko magulo yung isip niya. Parang nagre-reach out ako, sir. Hinahabol ko siya. So, ang ginawa ko lang po nun, pinamissing ko lang siya. At saka, magulo pa rin po yung utak ko nun. So, hindi ko alam kung sino yung kalaban ko at hindi ko alam kung sino yung ididemanda ko. Kasi, ang pinamumukha ng anak ko, kagustuhan niya eh. Pero, andun ako, pumapasok yung minor yung anak ko eh. Sinong kumakanlong sa anak ko? Sino yung dahilan? Bakit umalis yung anak ko? Anong nilagay nila sa utak ng anak ko? So, yun po sir, nung kinabukasan, totally nagulat ako sa sorry. Sa sinabi niya sa akin na kasi sabi ko, nung nalaman niya ni-report ko siya, na pinamissing ko siya at nagsabi ako sa school, nagsalita siya na kalaban na ako. Bakit? Bakit ako magiging kalaban? Nanay mo ako. At hindi na daw siya mag-aaral. Kumbaga, hindi niya kinaya lahat ng information na ipinasok sa utak niya. Ganon yung nangyari sa kanya. Lahat naman siguro ng professors and even the lawyers, alam naman siguro ng kapasidad ng isang 17 years old, 16 years old, para pasukan ng isang ideolohiya na makakasama sa nila. Kumbaga, kung kami nga mga magulang, hindi kami basta-basta nag-i-input ng kasi wala pa sa tamang kaisipan eh. Alam mo yun, biologically, hindi pa formally develop yung utak ng bata para gawin yung critical at talagang makakapag-isip siya ng maayos. Kumbaga yung kanyang decision making.
Okay. Okay po. Sige. Diyan muna tayo. Chapter muna tayo dyan. Professor, magandang umaga muli. Ito yung kaso ni Isay, yung anak niya nawala. Akala ko nga akbayan. Anak bayan daw. Parang magkatunog no?
Oy, may diferensya yan. Ha?
Ano po tingin ninyo? How do you look at this? Could this be an isolated case or could this be,
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Yeah, well, it's not an isolated case kasi masigasig yung anak bayan na mag-recruit all over the place. They're really very active right now. Dati it was the League of Filipino Students, but hindi na yung League of Filipino Students yan. It's the Anak Bayan now. It's a trend that's going on all over the school. And they are actually critical of the government. And just like the similar organizations, brother-sister organizations like Gabriela, and magkakasama naman yan, Gabriela, and then some are even party list groups. Kabataan is a party list group, Bayan is a party list group. And they wield influence. They wield a lot of influence in schools. Because I guess, very articulate yung mga batang yan. In Ateneo nga. I think even in Ateneo, yung mga nagkwan doon, nag-rally doon, I think are anak bayan. And of course, UP and then PUP, ayan. Sa St. Benilde, ewan ko kung may mga anak bayan na roon. Pero
alam mo, sa St. Benilde, Professor, anak mayaman. Hindi ka pwede mag-aral sa St. Benilde kung hindi ka scholar, kung hindi ka mayaman, right? It's no joke to be at St. Benilde. Pero seriously speaking, at a very young age, could a minor be brainwashed, so to speak?
Are they being brainwashed? Well, actually, matter of choice na rin yan doon sa bata eh. Kasi formative age yan. Pero may choice na rin yan. No? Na tama naman si Isay na as a mother, dapat nakikinig yung bata at saka nakikipag-usap sa kanya, nagda-dialogue sila. So something must have happened within the family. And may problema rin ang anak bayan kung hindi niya kinikilala at ginagalang yung family ties ng bata at yung relasyon ng bata doon sa kanyang pamilya. Kasi yun naman ang nangyayari pagka nagiging aktivista ka, and I should know what I'm talking about, pagka tuloy-tuloy at nawawala na yung ties with the family, magkakaroon ka ng problema doon. And then, so I can understand the feelings of Isay, yung kanyang problems, nung all of a sudden, wala na yung anak niya sa kanya. Hindi ko nga malaman, nawawala sa kanya, nag-underground na yung bata, or is the child in danger? Akala ko nga nasa ospital yung bata or something. So I didn't understand. But I think that is something that activists should also learn. They should try to understand that the family is part of society. It's the smallest unit of society. So I always say, if the students want to be active in these organizations, they should always include their parents. Siyempre, kung minsan magkakaroon ng tunggalian yan, no? Pero they should try to understand and relate. And then also there should be relationships with the teachers, with the faculty, and the administration, especially if you're talking about national issues. student issues.
Ah,
So, yun. This is the way-
Mabuti po, nililiwanag natin to dahil sa unang-una, marami rin kabataan nung nung panahon ko dalawang grupo yan eh. May grupong samahang double knit, di ba? SDK, Kabatang Makabayan, and things like that, no? May moderate, merong hindi moderate. Pero may mga kabataan talaga na nasa rally at
Oh.
merong mga teach-in nung araw, no? Pero palagay ko mahalagang pag-aralan din kung ano yung larawan dun sa paaralan. Ano yung response ng paaralan sa ganitong mga pagkakataon? While we're saying universities, colleges, ito yung lugar ng may free market of ideas. Pero palagay ko meron ding monitoring dapat yung eskwelahan sa activities ng mga bata in and outside the campus. Don't you think so, Professor?
Tama.
Kailangan
Well, sa kwan kasi, ako, nung nasa Jose Rizal College ako, when I was an instructor there, ang mga tinuturuan ko, working students Working students. They work during the day, then they
study by night.
night. So, meron akong mga full-time students during the day, nagtuturo ako. Pero at night, pag nagtuturo rin ako, meron mga working students. So, eto talagang mga pulis pa nga mga magiging estudyante ko. Tsaka mga ahente pa ng gobyerno.
yung mga nakatanim, ano?
Oo, nakatanim. Sabi ang pupunta para yung pala is-surveil na ako.
Talaga, it's worth remembering, ano? Kuminsan, with all these stories, parang magugulat ka na lang, napagdaanan pala natin yan. Pero, attorney, yung human rights profile ng Armed Forces of the Philippines, how is it today? Because whether we like it or not, there have been reports of extrajudicial killings. A good example yung pagpatay kay Father Tito Paez of Nueva Ecija, which I guess is still unsolved as of this day. That happened years ago. Ano po ang profile ngayon ng Armed Forces kung pag-uusapan yung human rights? Nung araw kasi, ang sinasabi, number one, violator ng human rights. Correct me if I'm wrong, Professor Eta. Police. Dalawa, militar. Ang rason ng police dahil kami yung pinaka-exposed sa communities. No? Yun naman ikang army, nasa bundok yun. Bihira yun. Bihira lumabas yun. Anyway, Colonel Esquivias, your thoughts please.
Bali sa amin po, well, we respect the yung criminal justice system. We also have our military justice system. Kaya nga po yung aming po mga campaign plan always po nakafocus on our adherence to human rights and international humanitarian law as well as the rule of law. Kaya po ang ginawa po namin, gusto ko lang pong sundan yung sinabi ni former chair Eta kanina na yung dynamics po nung yung sa amin po kasi we had this Labresa Declaration. I don't know if you remember that, ma'am. Yung Labresa Declaration on Human Rights Cooperation. It was signed in 2012 by the AFP with the CHR chaired then by Ma'am Loretta Ann Rosales. And doon po nakasaad po doon yung aming pong engagement with the CHR on one of the points po doon is on the evidence gathering, case build-up, and prosecution po of offenses na committed po by military personnel. Kaya po yung time na yon hanggang ngayon, in fact ngayon po we are now moving towards executing a memorandum of agreement or understanding not only with the CHR but with also with civil society. So yung human rights profile po namin talagang very open po kami sa mga sa mga issues po, mga allegations po against us na matugunan po, ma-resolve, ma-address yung mga issues po na allegedly or na implicate yung aming personnel on certain incidents like yung mga EJK po, no. In fact po, yung mga reports of EJKs, ang ginagawa po ng karamihan, hindi po na fina-file sa DOJ o sa police, sinasubmit po na sa UN without first exhausting the remedies available under the law sa ating bansa, no. Kaya yung mga report pong yun, pag nakuha po namin na, kasi we also monitor from open sources, nire-refer po namin for investigation. And lumalabas po na na hindi naman po totoo yung mga reports. Aside from that, we entered into mechanisms. There are two mechanisms po na very relevant today. One is the AO35 mechanism signed during the term po of President Noynoy Aquino, creating an interagency committee on EJKs, on enforced appearance, torture, and other grave violations. And the other po is on children in armed conflict. This is po before the enactment of RA 11188, which is the um, special protection on children in situations of armed conflict law. Meron na po kayong mechanism with the Council for the Welfare of Children on allegations po involving violations against children in armed conflict situations. So with that po, aside from our independent and separate military justice system, we have the criminal justice system in the Philippines, and also with the mechanisms to address po violations committed by our personnel. Yun po yung profile po ng human rights ng APA, nag-improve po ng malaki. Kasi nga po tagang open na open kami, kung meron man pong reklamo against our personnel, yan po itutugunan namin at aalamin po namin yung mga nangyari po talaga para makasuhan sila or ma-discharge from military service.
Yeah. If I remember right, may he rest in peace, I did some interviews with MILF Vice Chairman Ghazali Jafar. I visited him in his camp. We met in Manila. Incognito lang siya. Kukwentuhan kami. Natanong ko yan, informal interviews. Bakit may mga minor de edad sa hanay ng MILF at the time? Ang sagot niya sa akin, Melo, hindi mo mapipigilan yung mga anak nung mga combatants na napatay na palitan yung kanilang mga magulang. So, ang tingin nila, dapat managot yung gobyerno sa pagkamatay ng kanilang mga magulang. So, at a very young age, na-expose na sila sa ganito. Do you think we have the same conditions now? Kaya merong mga minor de edad na nasa armadong kilusan. Colonel.
Yung po, kasi under international humanitarian law, bawal po ang bata na maging sundalo, child warrior, child combatant. And yan po ay as early as the child abuse law, and now with the RA 11188 on children in situations of armed conflicts, special protection on children in situations of armed conflict po. Talaga pong hindi po pwede talagang isama ang bata sa digmaan. Kaya nga po yung ngayon, yung situation ngayon, no, ang nangyayari pong ganito, kaya yung kinikwento po ni Ma'am Isay kanina, na lumalabas po na na there is a scheme, no, na yung i-capitalize ng CPP NPA yung idealism ng mga bata na sumasali po sa mga organizations na ito po ay atin narinig at nalaman sa Senate hearing na naging proseso na doon sila nagre-recruit sa mga anak Pawis and Gabriela, at ultimately naging NPA po sila. Yan po ay violation po ng ating mga batas. That's why we want to raise the public's awareness po na ito po ay hindi dapat ginagawa ng CPP NPA, dahil po ang ating pong mga kabataan they have this special protection na di po dapat sila i-indoctrinate at hindi po sila i-lure or dadali na maging combatant po.
Pero can I say something lang,
Of course, please.
Melo? Alam mo yung sa Kwan, yung sinasabi mong reports are given to the United Nations, at kung minsan hindi totoo yung reports na yan, Of course, kailangan ma-validate yung reports. Kailangan ma-verify. Pero, Colonel Esquivias, this is more the truth than anecdotal. The Philippine National Police does not give its documents, yung mga profile cases, yung kahit na yung kanilang mga, anong tawag mo rito, on the spot reports, no? Hindi binibigay sa CHR. Hindi nga binibigay sa Senado eh. Kaya sabi ng Senado, there was a time when the Senate said, I think it was Senator PNP Lacson, no? O ibigay na yan to the CHR, yung mga profile reports ninyo dahil nagrereklamo si Chito Gascon as chair of the Commission on Human Rights. Akala mo ba binigay? Hindi binigay. Hindi binigay dahil at ang nila, ang katwiran nila at sinasabi rin ni nito nitong si President Duterte. Ako muna ang magbabasa lahat niyan. So one time, hiningi ng Senado lahat yung mga profile reports, on the spot reports ng mga pulis. Halimbawa, may pinatay sila o may nagkaroon ng encounter, on the spot yan, bibigay na kakuhang ebidensya. Yan dapat nakukuha na rin ng CHR. Hindi binigay. Tapos, nung hinihingi ng Senado, ang katwiran nila, sabi ni Duterte, ako muna ang magbabasa. Pag nabasa ko na lahat, tsaka ninyo ibigay sa Senado. You know, it's this distortion of the rule of law. Colonel, alam mo naman ako, I call a spade, no? It is this distortion of the rule of law that is taking place right now, no? And because of this distortion of the rule of law, ang magagawa ng Senado, wala. Nasa kamay ni Duterte lahat. At hanggang matapos niya, libo-libo yung babasahin niya. Alam naman natin si Presidente Duterte, hindi naman siya nagigising ng aga, hindi niya mababasa lahat yung mga yan.
Professor, baka naman sa gabi binabasa?
Pag nagising na nga siya sa gabi, pwede naman niyang basahin sana. Pero hindi matatapos yun. Ayun. So, yun ang totoo. Kaya, mahirap nating sabihin, at saka, Colonel, mahirap mo rin namang sabihin na, of course, I remember La Bresa Declaration. Tuwan-tuwa nga ako kasi siniseryoso ninyo eh. During that time, siniseryoso ko yung mga human rights. And we had La Bresa Declaration mainly because the meeting took place in La Bresa Hotel, no? Pero seryoso lahat yan. We had our resolutions and everything. Pinakita ko nga yan sa DILG kay General Anyo. Ito ang La Bresa Declaration ng PNP. Seryoso sila rito. So why don't we push through with this?
Anong sabi niya?
Sige, sabi niya gano'n. Kasi alam mo, si General Anyo, ang history din yan. Nung panahon ni Pinoy lahat ito Nung panahon ni President Pinoy, merong controversy about him. When he was head of the intelligence, that was the time that
Jonas Burgos went missing.
That was the time that he went missing, no? So controversial siya ron. But it was also the time nung wala na siya ron that it was one of the region, must have been region 3 or anong region siya noon, na tumulong siya at police tumulong din when we went to Region 4 yon, Bondok Peninsula, Southern Tagalog. Nagpunta kami sa Bondok Peninsula. Yan pinakaganid at pinakamatindi na mga landlords na ayaw ibigay yung kanilang land plantations dun sa Carper, dun sa land reform program. Nagpunta ako doon. Tapos na ako ng tapos na ako ng House of Representatives. Hindi pa ako, wala pa ako sa
CHR.
Wala pa. So, citizen ETA lang ako noon. Pero nagpunta ako doon, no. Patapos na ako sa House of Representatives. Patapos na ako. So, nagpunta ako doon. I got the military. I got the Philippine National Police. Pumunta kami ron to install the farmers. Yes. And we succeeded sa Bondok Peninsula because of the people's organizations. And then, yung tulong ng police at ng militar. Can you imagine that? Hindi makalimutan ni General Anyo yan. So, when we were having these human rights, yung conferences or meetings with General Manuel, head of the former chief of staff, no? And when we were having all these meetings, pinagmalaki ni General Anyo yan. He even wrote a pamphlet about that. And sabi niya, inisyatiba ng military ito na tumulong sa civil society at sa House of Representatives para ma-install. Na-install namin. And up to now, nandun ang mga farmers. That was the first time, and lagi kong tatanong kung kumusta. Katarungan is the one that is the overall organization that takes care of them. So this to me is one of yung tagumpay sa akin. But it was with the help of the military. Kasi yung mga ganid na mga landlords, may mga goons sila. And I am afraid meron ding mga private organizations, not gonna mention names anymore, who were helping them against us in the farmers doon sa kwan. Yun. So, hindi makalimutan ni General Anyo.
Okay.
Friendly nga siya.
Yeah.
So, he was ganun. Pero he allowed that. But under the new policy of President Duterte, ibang usapin na yan. Siyempre, hierarchical yan eh. Kung anong sabihin ni President Duterte, sunod sila.
Yeah. Professor, ano kaya ang mangyayari ngayon na yung dating Chief PNP, I'm talking of the Honorable Bato de la Rosa, na noon ayaw magbigay ng dokumento sa CHR at kahit sa Senado, is now a member of the Senate. Will that change the complexion?
Well, I don't suppose so. I don't think he'll just keep quiet about it. And I don't think he'll probably say, di bali ako na nasa Senado.
Okay. You think that measure is a perverted measure because it tramples on the rule of law?
Yes. Well, I don't even have to mention Bato. What I will mention is Senator Go. I never really know Senator Go. You never really know where he's going, no? What particular branch of government he belongs to. Because Senator Go never left his position as assistant or advisor of President Duterte. And he was doing fine when he was there. But of course, he won as a senator. How he won as a senator?
Well, he won, definitely. That's for sure. Because even Ramon Revilla Jr. won by simply dancing. Di ba? Ganun lang naman yun. Pero hindi yun ang topic natin ngayon. Okay.
Human rights.
Human rights tayo. Okay. Isay, ano nang measure ang ginawa ninyo bilang isang magulang? Ano na yung hakbang na ginawa mo para mabawi, so to speak, yung iyong anak?
Nag-file po ako ng case nung last time na dinismiss. Hindi ko nga alam bakit dinismiss ng DOJ at ng Supreme Court yung aking kaso kasi malinaw naman na minor de edad na recruit yung bata. Uulitin ko, minor de edad. So ang sinasabi nila, lack of evidence daw ako na connected yung NPA, yung Anak Bayan o yung mga progressive na grupo sa NPA. Sabi ko, criminal case ang gusto kong ang aking final. Kasi kinuha nila yung anak ko nang walang consent ko. Ginamit nila yung anak ko nang walang consent ko. So, yun yung aking Tsaka hinihingi ko lang nun probable cause. Hindi ko alam bakit hindi kami nabigyan ng probable cause. Dapat napakalinaw naman nun kung yung mga tsismosa nga diyan sa kanto mag-away lang sila, nabibigyan ng dahilan para madinig yung kaso nila. Ako pa na yung anak ko wala sa akin, at the same time, ang daming ebidensya, ang daming mga kabataan, yung mismong nakasama ni AJ na si Christian Sabado, na isa siya sa nag-i-induce sa bata na sumampa na sa kabundukan. Sir, ang mahirap kasi dito, hindi ko mawari, ang dami nating pinaglalaban na human rights na ganito, itong mga sa human rights worker. Pero hindi ko mawari na bakit yung mga bata na kapag nasa Anak Bayan or Kabataan Party List, bakit sila sumasampa sa kabundukan? Bakit yung mga bata namamatay doon, mga ano pa yun, mga kabataan pa yung parte, wala bang ginagawa ang human rights worker na kondinahin ang CPP-NPA na yung mga batang naandun na supposedly maganda ang kinabukasan dahil unang-una may pagmamahal sa bayan, pero bakit nila inilalagay sa kabundukan para makipaglaban sa mga well-trained na army?
Okay.
Ang hirap kong isipin, sir, na ito yung nangyayari sa ating bansa na hindi napapansin na supposedly na itong mga bata na 'to magiging magaling na leader 'to. Ang battle nasa gobyerno, wala sa kabundukan. Bakit hindi nabibigyang pansin ng mga matataas na tao na nakaupo sa gobyerno na alisin na 'tong armed struggle? Hindi ako against sa pagiging aktivista. Maraming mali sa lipunan. Pero ang sa akin, sir, bakit kailangan may mga batang namamatay? Bakit anak ng ibang tao ang namamatay doon? Habang yung mga parte ng CPP, NPA, NDF, ang anak nila at ang kaapu-apuhan nila ay nasa safe na lugar.
Okay.
Nagkaso po, nag-ano po uli ako, sir, humiling kami na i-review yung sinampa namin.
Mhm.
Nung sinampa ko, namin mag-asawa, nang sa ganun makita naman nila na merong dahilan. Kumbaga, buhay na ng anak ko ang nakasalalay dito. Ayoko maging katulad siya ni Sai Ligad na namatay dun sa Mindanao. Ayoko matulad siya nung ibang mga kabataan, yung namatay dun sa Palawan, na may maganda pang maraming paraan para ipaglaban yung ating mga karapatan. Tsaka kung may karapatan ng ibang tao, dapat walang masasagasaan ng karapatan ng pamilya.
Okay. Thank you. Well said. Attorney, anong nakikita niyo yung papel ng Armed Forces of the Philippines? Medyo controversial to. Doon sa pagpapatupad ng anti-terror law. Ngayon na meron ng implementing rules and regulations.
We welcome po na meron pong IRR na yung anti-terror law dahil doon po nakasaad yung proseso po ng yung pagsampa ng kaso, ano po yung medyo detalyado na ano yung mga offenses na nakapaloob po sa anti-terror law. At we respect po na yung iba po ay nag-file ng kaso sa Supreme Court para po malaman kung constitutional ba o unconstitutional itong batas na ito. But for us po, kasi po yung unang batas, yung Human Security Act, hindi po niya natugunan yung mga problema po na mga related sa terrorism. That is why ito po nung ginawa po yung batas, dumaan po sa proseso sa ating Kongreso at yung nga po nung naipasa sa batas na at yung ginawa po ng IRR, ayon pong na sana maresolbahan na ito para po malaman namin kung paano po kami kikilos under the law, kasi we adhere to, we follow the rule of law,
Yeah.
and we are resolute in our commitment po that we will abide po kung ano man po ang mga batas at mga desisyon po ng Korte Suprema.
Mhm. Yeah, mabuti naman at binabanggit niyo yan. Professor, kasama ba yung inyong grupo sa nag-petisyon sa Korte Suprema tungkol sa anti-terror law?
Siyempre, unang-una kami doon.
Ano nakikita niyong dahilan? Bakit?
You know, I hate to say it, but the palace wants to legitimize illegal acts. Extrajudicial killings are unlawful and are criminal. Maybe we should ask that from the attorney. They are criminal. And therefore, he wants to, that's the reason why he is so strong on pushing for the death penalty. So with the death penalty, that will legitimize judicial killings. But what he is doing are extrajudicial killings. And he keeps on denying that he allows extrajudicial killings. But when he talks, sasabihin lang nila, ay bulaklak ng dila yan. Alam mo naman, I will kill you if you accuse me of corruption and I am not corrupt. You know, yun ang bulaklak ng dila niya. But he couldn't care less. And he knows that with the so-called, ano yung percentage niya? 93% ba?
91.
91% popularity rating. Ba't sunod-sunuran? Ang dami. Parang yung mga sunod-sunuran kay Trump. No? Ganyan din sa atin. Meron talagang, kung anong sabihin ni Duterte, susunod sila. Of course, yung military, tsaka yung army, yung police. Susunod sila kasi vertical yung hierarchical command. He is the commander-in-chief.
Mhm.
Tama o mali ang ginagawa niya, tama o mali, susunod sila kasi yun yung utos niya. Although sa kanilang manual, hindi sila dapat sumusunod pagka unlawful yung utos na pinagagawa sa kanila. So yun. So that but if you legitimize yung illegal killings through the anti-terror law, then that makes it easy for him. He cannot be accused because it is lawful already. It is legal.
But
And,
there's also a dictum that not everything legal is moral, right?
exactly.
Mhm.
In every law, that's why when we talk about the rule of law, and Colonel Esquivias,
Yeah.
I hope you will, I would like to know your thoughts about this. But this is what we teach, and this is what I used to propagate. The rule of law is not just any kind of law arbitrarily thought of by whoever is an authority in government. It must be publicly promulgated. It must be equally enforced. Ibig sabihin, pantay-pantay lahat. Nobody is above the law, including President Duterte. Equally enforced. It must be independently adjudicated. So even the Supreme Court and the courts below must have independence. You don't hold on to their necks. You don't strangle them with a quo warranto or with impeachment proceedings. No, you must respect their independence, and it must be consistent with international human rights laws.
Mhm.
Those.
Okay.
That's what makes the rule of law. So you don't, impose it on the legislature to make such a law, and you don't silence independent adjudication
Mhm.
so as to justify your rule of law.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now,
that's it.
very good. Attorney, there's this dictum in Bicol. I don't know whether you heard this because you grew up in Manila. Manila boy ka na eh. Sabi sa Bicol, I just won't mention the place in Bicol, if the parties cannot settle the case amicably and the fiscal fails to fix the case, then there is no other option but for the judge to business the case. It all
So,
boils down now to money.
ah,
Manicably at saka to business.
Fixing and then to business the case. Well, of course, this is more of a kwentong kutsero. No? Pero
ah,
paano yun? When there is justice for the rich and justice for the poor, ito yung sinasabing propaganda ng mga kabila. Eh. Yung pagtatangi na ito, special yan, exempted yan. Ito, sige, kasuhan natin. How do you feel about it as a lawyer?
kaya po we are confident na na well, it's true, may mga tinatawag na hoodlums in robes, may mga pangyayaring ganyan. Pero sa hanay po namin sa AFP, kami po ay nirespeto namin yung system. Kasi kung hindi po respetuhin yung system, magkakaroon po ng breakdown. Yun po ang aking personal na na opinion. Kaya po yung sinabi mo ni Ma'am Eta kanina, sa amin po we welcome reports against us because that's the way we can check our person if they are doing the right thing or not.
Mm-hmm.
We do not tolerate offenses po. Kaya po nagkaroon kami ng best declaration dati at ngayon continuous ang aming sa CHR na in fact MOA na ang plano gawin to involve civil society. Kasi nga po aside from us, we understand yung iba po ayaw po mag-file ng complaint sa hanay namin sa military dahil nga po they might feel na baka whitewash, may cover up, mga ganun bagay po. That's why we welcome na if they want to file in other forums, jurisdictions, pwede naman po yun. That's why we need we seek the help of civil society and even the CHR para po matugunan po yung mga reklamo laban sa aming personnel. In fact nga po, simula 2016, wala pong na-file na kaso sa korte against our personnel. And we attribute that to our training po on human rights and IHL sa mga sundalo namin. Kasi ngayon po ibang-iba na po alam na po nila ano yung karapatang pantao, ano yung mga dapat gawin, ano yung mga dapat hindi gawin dahil nangyayari kasi yung mga violation na nangyari dati, hindi nila alam na bawal pala yun. Violation na pala ng batas yun. With our continuous advocacy campaign and na-upgrade na nga po yung aming curriculum to include the new laws, anti-torture law, anti-interference law, RA 951, our domestic law on IHL, pati rin po yung bagong batas ngayon, yung RA 11188, yan po ay naka-incorporate na sa aming mga curriculum. Kaya we are happy to note po na yan po ay nai-instill na para maging second nature ng mga sundalo yung mga ganyan. As regards po yung mga yung mga final na kaso, yun po ay sa PNP, hindi po sa AFP, and we welcome po kung meron po may mga reports para po ma-coordinate po namin sa complainant kung pwede, kung gusto po may pag-coordinate sa namin para masampa namin kaso yung mga personnel namin.
Okay. So at least meron tayong mechanism. Siguro I'd like to give credit to Chair Eta Rosales for seriously looking into this because definitely complainants will have second thoughts to file the complaint. No?
Yun po
Without
yes po.
the CHR and of course the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Yes, Professor? What are your...
If I may add lang po, what we learned from Chair Eta is that everything should be human rights based. That's why we have the human rights based approach. Yun po it was a paradigm shift with our IPSC Bayanihan campaign plan. Yun po nag-open po na mas maging proactive po yung aming pong pagrespeto po sa karapatang pantao. Yan. Thank you, Pam.
Yeah, Professor, ano nakikita niyong kinabukasan natin? Magpo 2022 na.
Well, ako naman, I am a cockeyed optimist. whether you like it or not. For as long as may mga tao parang nabubuhay dito sa Pilipinas, may, may pag-asa yan. No, hindi tayo mawawalan ng pag-asa kahit paano. So ang importante riyan, tulad nga nung sabi ni Colonel Esquivias, at ito rin binanggit ng isang general ng PNP noon You know why, Juan, sabi niya, you know why they commit human rights violations? Simple lang Because they don't know the law. So they don't know the law, so they violate the law. Because they don't know the law. So they commit human rights violations. So in other words, it's really education sa ating mga personnel. Pero I will tell you this much, even the government personnel, yung mga employees ng gobyerno, I have had occasion to give talks to them, no? Not all of them, some of them. Hindi talaga nila alam Hindi nila alam yung international human rights instruments to which we are treaties and which in fact guide them in the moral dimensions of the work that they do, because their work is anchored on statutory laws that come from the Constitution. So, dapat malinaw sa kanila yon. But the Constitution is anchored on these international human rights norms. Hindi nila naililink itong mga ito. And to me, yun ang napakalaking problema sa atin sa Pilipinas. Because for as long as I don't want to go into so much deeper into this, no? But for as long as we do not go deep into understanding who we are, where we are going, for as long as we do not understand this, and this means understanding your focus, understanding your laws, and enforcing the laws that you happen to be in. Wala. We will forever be victims of the patronage politics that operates in the Philippines right now.
Okay.
Yun ang nag-guide sa atin. And through oligarchic rule. No? Yun.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Alright. Sandali po, mga kaibigan. Isay, ano mensahe mo? We're about to close. Anong mensahe mo sa kinauukulan? Please go ahead.
Ang mensahe ko lang po sa kinauukulan, sana tama po yung sinabi ni Ma'am Eta, talagang they need education regarding dun sa law. At the same time, gusto ko rin pong sana po lahat sa government, especially sa CHR, sana lahat ng aspeto tingnan nila. Wag lang yung naka-focus lang sa AFP, sa PNP, o sa lahat ng mga nasa government. Kasi even ang CPP, NPA, NDF, or nasa NPA, they commit also human rights violator din sila. So makikita naman natin yan sa lahat ng mga nangyayari. Ako na mismo ang living evidence at yung mga kabataan na nasira ang buhay at nasira ang kinabukasan. Kasi hindi naman, yung human rights, hindi naman siya limited sa mga tao lang kung sino yung nakikita lang natin. Kailangan yung paggawa rin natin ng batas at paggawa natin ng sana lahat nakikita, lahat ng aspeto. At para bilang ina, nagpapasalamat po ako na merong mga ganitong forum. Nagkakaroon na ng pagre-reach out from the progressive groups at saka sa ating mga government authorities. At the same time, ang pinaka magandang nangyari ngayon may nakakausap na po kayong nanay, mga magulang, kasi noong araw wala pong ganito laging ang pagitan lang ng AFP, PNP at saka yung mga progressive. Ngayon po, nagpapasalamat ako dahil andito ako bilang boses ng mga nanay na ito po yung nararamdaman namin, ito po yung nangyayari sa amin, napakinggan nyo rin po kami. At higit sa lahat, at the end of the day, kahit anong posisyon natin sa gobyerno at kung ano man yung katungkulan nyo o mga narating nyo, nanay pa rin tayo, magulang pa rin tayo ng ating mga anak. May mga apo tayo. Ang pinaka main dapat na na priority rin natin yung kaligtasan ng ating pamilya. Kayo na rin po ang nagsabi no na ito yung pinaka importante, ang pamilya. Kasi dito nagsisimula ang lahat. Kung sisirain ng pamilya, wala tayong mabubuong maayos na gobyerno. Ayun lang po.
Salamat po. Colonel Esquivias, please.
Yes, sir. Maraming pong salamat ulit for inviting the AFP po to our office sa ganitong forum. Gusto ko lang po sundan yung sinabi ni Ma'am Isay. With human rights, parang may conflict ba or yung right ng school, ang academic freedom, yung right ng magulang para sa kanilang mga anak na below 18 nasa care and custody ng magulang, at yung mga organization po na tinataguyod po yung mga karapatang pantao na yung iba po ay nag-cross na ng line na yun po ay naging nest kung saan po nakakakuha ng mga NPA rebels, yung mga kaya ang mga former rebels po sila mismo nagsasabi na ganun po ang nangyayari. Kaya we hope with the Republic Act 11188 na ito po ay ma-enforce ng mabuti, at yun po tinutulak namin na we should strengthen mechanisms. On the part of the AFP, we value so much po yung mga mechanisms ng batas para po may the supremacy of the law na yung po lagi ang manaig, at yung mga violators, whether saan man galing yan, ay managot po sila. Lastly po, because we are in the AFP, we try very hard to comply with the principles of international maritime law, or the law of armed conflict, or the law of war as they call it. And we hope na yung mga violations po ng NPA ay makita rin po ng CHR at ng ating gobyerno para po makasuhan po itong mga nangyayari po, para matapos na po yung insurgency. More than 50 years na po nangyari. We hope with we will move forward with our national development kung yan po ay matapos na. Maraming salamat po uli.
Yeah. Professor Eta, I don't know kung kailangan ba baguhin yung batas, pero don't you think it will be much better if, binalik na rin lang yung ranggong militar sa Philippine National Police? Don't you think it is also fitting and proper that police officers be subjected to the Commission on Appointments confirmation?
Yeah. The
Balik
police.
na yung ranggo General na rin
Oh, of course. Yeah, I remember that. Dapat nga lamang. At saka, dapat stricto rin yung CHR na siyang siyang nagde-decide whether or not the police who has violated can be released already. Kung kailangan siyang ma-promote, merong certificate na binibigay ang CHR sa kanya. And then anchored again on the merits of the system. Siguro at palalimin pa yung pag-aaral. Yung HRAW heads ng PNP would say noon, text material, lecturing doesn't do well. Kailangan case-to-case basis. And I believe that. Ang daming kaso ng mga police. You use those cases to instruct and to make them realize, itong kasong ito, anong gagawin mo? You make the decisions that way. I've heard of, just to show a point in a seminar that I was giving before, and I don't know if I've mentioned it already here, but a major who told us the narrative, kasi mga militar at saka police yung binibigyan ko noon. Nangangampanya si President Duterte para maging presidente. 2016, nandun ako sa Davao noon. And dun sa pag-aaral namin, inamin ng major na may enkwentro sila with the NPA. So nandito siya, nandun yung mga NPAs. Tapos nakaayos na sila, handa na silang bumaril. May bata na lumabas doon sa hanay ng NPA. Di siya yung mag-order. So, hold, sabi niya. Huwag papatayin kasi bata yan. So, hindi nila pinatay. Hindi sila bumaril. So, ang ginawa ng NPA, nakita nila yung target nila. Sila yung bumaril, namatay yung best friend ng major. And that depressed him because ang tindi nung naging epekto sa kanya. Kwento niya yan. So do you regret ka kung gano'n yung ginawa mo na inolt mo yung order na bumaril sila? No, ma'am, I don't regret it. Kasi pag in-order ko yun, patay yung bata. But it depressed me, sabi niya gano'n. Because I know the rights of the child at hindi dapat babaril doon. Yun, naka-angkla yun doon sa international human rights law na yung kung non-combatant, hindi ka dapat bumaril. At lalo na kung bata, hindi ka dapat bumaril sa isang minor, di ba? Sa isang bata. And I felt good about that kasi produkto na yon nung pag-aaral eh.
Okay.
Yun.
Yeah. Let me ask you your thoughts about red tagging. We are identifying you. We're not red tagging.
Yeah. Talaga na.
O, i-reserve na natin next year yung topic na yan.
Red tag, oh. Well, lalo ng kwan, you do not have, as long as you do not have evidence, huwag kang maglalabas ng ganyan. Lalo na if it's in public. Kwan yan eh, yung, anong tawag mo rito? What do you call this? Pagka sa media, you talk about it, tapos libelous.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
I would call it that. That's libel. Wala kang ebidensya na pinakikita. And then, bakit mo ilalabas yan before the public na hindi pa dumaan sa trial, wala pang due process?
Ang alam ko kasi kung merong ebidensya, may intelligence build up, may case build up. Then file the case in court.
Yeah. Yan ang gawin nila.
That's the rule of law. Anyway, mga kaibigan, I'd like to say thank you to everyone sa mga nanood sa atin mula sa Kingdom of Saudi Arabia hanggang sa Bicol region at iba pang bahagi ng daigdig. Thank you very much for being with us. Salamat kay Colonel Eduardo Esquivias, kay Isay Lucena, at kay Chair Eta Rosales. Let me end our special edition on human rights with a simple sentence from a man who died 7 years ago, and his name is Nelson Mandela, who said to deny people their human rights is to challenge their very humanity. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. God bless us all. Thank you very much again.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, attorney. Bye-bye.